Yeah, we back. Now, today's going to be a quick video. We're going to be reacting to an article coming out of the Washington Post. Yes. Now, the author of this article is a lady by the name of Rachel Chasen. I believe that's her name. As you can see, she is the West Africa Bureau Chief. Yes, this lady right here is the West Africa Bureau Chief at the Washington Post. So she got the inside information as it relates to, African politics. She got the inside information when it comes to the black man's internal affairs. She is the trusted source, right? Rachel Chasen. So we're going to be reacting to the article that she put out, I believe sometime today or yesterday. She wrote an article talking about the captain, President Ibrahim Traoré. So, I'm going to see what she had to say. Now, on her social media, she said, on the Washington Post front page today, the story of how Ibrahim Traoré became known as a Pan-African legend, capturing global attention in a way that very few African leaders have recently. But the reality in Burkina Faso is complicated, with both genuine excitement and brutal repression. So sounds like it's going to be another hit piece, dictator, the tyrant, the violator of human rights and democracy, right? I'm already preparing myself for the slander. Now, it's funny because just a few days ago, like we've been talking about on my channel, a French military commander was brought into custody for attempting to kill the head of state in Mali, right? But of course, there will never be any articles published in the Western media calling Emmanuel Macron a tyrant, a warmonger, an authoritarian, a destabilizer, a foreign agitator. None of these slanderous statements will be levied against his name in the international media, right? But of course, let's continue to dogpile on the brother. But it is what it is. Let's talk about it, right? Let's talk about it. You see, I understand. We got to deflect attention away from France. We have to deflect attention away from France. You see, that's what happens. We've been scoring too many goals on the adversary. The counterintelligence in the AES is just too strong, right? You see, take a look up on the screen. This how we doing the adversary. See the adversary on the floor. We just diddy bopping on the adversary. We breaking the ankles of the adversary. We stepping on the field, hitting the Ronaldinho and the Zinedine Zidane on the adversary. That's what we doing, right? So of course they angry, right? We scoring buckets on the adversary. So now we have to deflect attention away from France, the criminal activity of the French government, and we have to bring attention back on the captain. I understand. But anyway, let's jump straight into the article. Take a look up on the screen. Deep inside a massive military base in the West African country, soldiers are raising chickens and growing pineapples. They say they are part of a revolution headed by a young military captain turned coup leader, which they hope will sweep across the continent. After seizing power in a 2022 coup, Traoré tapped into a wellspring of discontent with the West and a moribund African nationalism, calling for self-reliance in the face of imperialist neocolonialism. He cut military ties with France, the country's former colonial ruler, and moved closer to Russia. Regarded by his supporters as an heir to Thomas Sankara, the socialist revolutionary who led Burkina Faso from 1983 until his assassination in 1987, Traoré has been championed by demonstrators from Jamaica to New York. Now, my first issue with the article is that if you're somebody who has no knowledge of, the current political landscape, she starts her timeline in the 1980s, right? She starts her timeline, in recent years, the 2022 coup. When in reality, if you're going to make an article or if you're going to talk about the captain, the timeline of events has to begin with the arrival of the French in the Sahel. You have to talk about the Voulay-Chanoine colonial military expeditions that the French government launched back in the 1800s. That's when the timeline begins. It doesn't begin in 1987. It doesn't begin in 2022. It begins over 100 years ago. If you're not going to talk about the Voulay and Chanoine colonial missions that the French government launched in Africa back in the 1800s, then you're not a credible journalist. Then you're not a credible individual. You're not going to leave that out of the story. You're not going to do that. You have to talk about the crimes against humanity committed by Paul Voulay and Julien Chanoine. If you're not going to do that, shut your mouth. Now let's continue. The Washington Post interviewed dozens of people in Burkina Faso, including those close to Traoré, to shed light on the forces driving his remarkable reinvention, from obscure junta leader to a political icon. While Traoré's economic populism has reshaped the country and won him genuine support, some locals said he has relied on Russian-backed disinformation and intense repression to solidify his authoritarian rule. Once again, the key buzzwords, in effect, authoritarian, right? So boom, we already got two buzzwords. Brutal repression and authoritarian. Oh, and I forgot, Russian disinformation. Now, keep in mind, the country is currently at war, right? The country is currently fighting a war within its own borders, but at the same time, they're calling him an authoritarian, as if these same Western nations don't also have emergency measures, especially during times of war, where certain authoritarian measures are taken for national security. But anyway, let's continue. The government has suspended political parties and civil society groups and banned multiple foreign news organizations. Rights activists and journalists who criticize the regime have been forced to serve on the front lines in its war against Islamic extremists, who have taken over vast swaths of the country in recent years. As the crackdown has intensified, Traoré's cult of personality has flourished online, affording him unchecked power, according to critics, and allowing the military and allied militias to commit widespread abuse against civilians. Oh man, here it comes. Ibrahim Traoré, the murder of the civilians, right? Listen, authoritarian, brutal repression, the Russian disinformation, and the murderer of civilians. Man, the article has just begun, and we have already destroyed the man's name, right? We have already destroyed the man's name. But of course, I'm not surprised. The Washington Post, they have to put out what is in line with the State Department. They cannot go against the narrative of the foreign policy advisors at the United States government. But anyway, let's talk about it. So in that part of the article, she says that she tries to criticize the captain for what he says is targeting the political parties and the civil society groups. Now, like we mentioned before, currently right now, there is a French military commander in custody in Mali for trying to destabilize the government and overthrow the president, right? And some of the tactics they said that he used to destabilize the country was mobilizing the civil society groups as well as the political leaders, the political parties, right? So the political parties and the civil society were used as the Trojan horse to destabilize Mali, right? With the end goal to be to overthrow the country, overthrow the government. But now they're upset because Captain Ibrahim Traoré has taken it upon himself to pump the brakes on them so-called civil society leaders, the so-called politicians and the leaders of the political parties, who, as we know, are receiving funding from unknown sources, who, as we know, the only reason they want to get in office is to plunder the state coffers and to live fancy overseas. So they're trying to make it seem like he's attacking democracy, when in reality, he's actually defending his sovereignty, right? Because he can see that these so-called civil society leaders can be used as Trojan horses for foreign powers. But of course, Miss Rachel Chasten will not mention that. But it's okay. That's why I am here, to sharpen your analysis and maybe open your eyes to certain things that you may have been previously unaware of. Also in the article, she goes on to mention that the Islamic extremists have taken over vast areas of the country, right? They're taking over the country, right? When just a couple weeks ago, I did a video where we examined the report by the World Bank that said that the economy is actually on an upward trajectory and the security situation is actually improving. And that's why the economy is also improving, because you cannot have economic growth without a solid security situation. So how can you be losing control of the country, losing control of the territory, while at the same time you're having economic growth at the same exact time? You're having agriculture growth at the same exact time? Come on, man. Take a look up on the screen. According to the World Bank's April 2025 economic update, the country's economy grew by 4.9%. Now, the second paragraph, the acceleration is attributed mainly to the performance of services and agriculture supported by, wait for it, an improved security situation. Wow. But meanwhile, she's telling me that the captain is losing control of the country to the Islamic extremists. Wow. Anyway, let's continue. Also in the article, she said that he is forcing journalists to serve on the front lines in the military, right? Oh my God, he is forcing black men to defend their country. Oh my God, those poor black men being forced to defend their territory. I can only imagine the pain she must feel, the empathy she must feel for those poor black men being forced to defend their national territory. Oh my God. Anyway, let's continue. The Traorés were not especially political, according to a person close to the family, who, like others in the story, spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to talk to the media. But Ibrahim Traoré served in a student labor union at university, the person said, which gave him a grounding in leftist thought. Now, time out. I just got to tell this lady, in case she's not familiar, stop trying to reduce black men, African men, to your Western political ideologies that are not indigenous to our cultures or our points of view. I've never, not once, ever heard the captain call himself a leftist, right? These terms that Europeans created, stop trying to apply them to African politics. We got our own thing going on. We need to create our own terms, right? He's never, not once, hopped on a microphone and said, I'm a leftist. I'm doing it for the leftists. No, I've heard him say he's a Pan-Africanist on multiple occasions. Yes. I've heard him acknowledge that he's a Muslim. Yes. Never, not once, ever heard him say, I'm a leftist, socialist, I'm a liberal, Democrat, conservative, this and that. Those are European terms, right? Our loyalties is to our people, our citizens, and our ancestors, not to a certain ideology on the political spectrum, whether left or right or any of this stuff. We are loyal to our ancestors. We do what is in the best interest of our people, and we do it in the name of our ancestors. So stop trying to apply your cultural worldview to what we got going on, because it's not going to directly translate. Anyway, let's continue. He fought on the front lines as Islamist extremists made rapid advances across West Africa, ramping up attacks in Mali before moving on to neighboring Burkina Faso, turning this once peaceful nation of 23 million into a global epicenter of terrorism. Traoré was among a group of military officers who overthrew the democratically elected government in January 2022, arguing that it had lost control of the security situation. Traoré, leading an artillery unit, headed back to the field, but continued to urge the military government to take the threat more seriously, according to 3 people who had served with him. When he felt they were falling short, he ousted them too. Shortly after, on October 14th, 2022, he was officially sworn in as president. The next day, at a ceremony marking the 35th anniversary of Sankara's assassination, Traoré stood clasping the torch that symbolized the revolution. Today, once barren expanses of Ouagadougou are being transformed by young men pushing wheelbarrows and wielding trowels. Most of the cement for the new roads and the sidewalks are donated from an initiative called Faso Mebo, which roughly translates to build your homeland. The president's idea is simple. No one is coming to help us, so we need to do it for ourselves. Now, time out. Earlier in the article, she said that the terrorists are taking over the country, right? The government is being overran by the Islamic extremists, and the country is the global epicenter of terrorism. But now she's saying that roads are being paved, agriculture is being produced, right? Infrastructure projects are being carried out. And like I mentioned before, according to the World Bank, the economy is on an upward trajectory. But she just told me the Islamic extremists, the jihadists, are taking over the country and overrunning the government. So as you can see, even within her own article, she contradicted herself multiple times. She opened up the article saying that this is a dictator who is committing crimes against humanity, who is losing control of his country. And then she says that this is a nation builder. He's paving roads and he's building buildings and the agriculture is booming. Like, brother, you can't listen. Whatever. Let's continue. Modeled after Sankara's public infrastructure projects, which deployed civil servants to help with construction, Faso Mebo brings everyone together, with ministers' sons volunteering alongside petty criminals. Traoré has followed Sankara's lead by investing state funds in tomato processing, dairy companies, and grain mills. As part of an agriculture offensive, his government has subsidized fertilizer, donated hundreds of tractors, and provided training to thousands of farmers, who represent 80% of the population. Now, I thought this was a dictator, an authoritarian despot committing crimes against humanity, killing his own civilians. Now you're telling me that he's investing state resources into augmenting the agriculture sector, providing free training to thousands of farmers, free equipment to thousands of farmers. Wow, I thought this was a killer, a dictator, a demon. Let's continue. At the military base in Ouagadougou, soldiers said that the country's former leaders used to tell them that they should look elsewhere for support and for food. Wow. So the democratically elected leaders told their own soldiers, I don't got no money for you or food for you. Go look elsewhere, right? Now, that's why you have some soldiers who go on to engage in criminality, who engage in corruption and bribery, right? Because the government told them to look elsewhere for food, look elsewhere for support, right? The democratically elected leaders told their own soldiers to go to hell. That's crazy. That's crazy, man. Anyway, let's continue. IB, that is the nickname for the captain, right? IB came and said, our land is fertile. We're going to grow everything. We're going to try everything. So listen, the previous leaders told the military, go to hell. I don't got nothing for you. The captain came through and said, listen, we're going to grow our own food. Our land is fertile. We're going to grow everything we need. Let's continue. That is how the vision for pineapples and bananas, which are not native to Burkina Faso, was born. Soldiers explained on a recent day, walking reporters past a militia member working the fields. Rodrigo Ugbare, a sergeant on break from the front lines, turned on the new solar-powered sprinklers, creating a cool mist that cut through the summer heat. We are in 2 wars against hunger and insecurity, and we have to win them both. Violence by Islamic extremists has surged since Traoré took power, according to independent analysts and U.S. State Department assessments, right? So the source she's taken for what's happening on the ground is the U.S. government. Just noting that. I'm just noting that. Then she says the government insists that it is winning the fight, right? So Burkina Faso's government says they're making progress in the fight, but according to the United States government, the terrorism is booming and surging and the country is being destroyed. But she just told us that he's building the country, he's paving roads, he's getting tractors, the farmers are producing agriculture. But now she's going back to telling us that the Islamic extremists are taking over the country. God damn. And you notice how in the beginning, like I mentioned before, she failed to mention the history of the French colonists in the region. She started the timeline in the 1980s when I told her the timeline begins when the first French invader penetrated the Sahel, but she did not start the timeline back there. Even in this situation, when she talks about the terrorism, she doesn't talk about the timeline of terrorism that began, which was the NATO intervention in Libya that toppled Gaddafi and sent the terrorist groups all around the region. She doesn't want to talk about the Western intervention that led to the proliferation of terrorist groups in the region. So like I said, this is a dishonest journalist. You don't talk about the Western intervention that destroyed the region, and you don't talk about the French invasions that brought us to where we are today. The anti-French sentiment is due to French imperialism, but she did not once touch on that or Western intervention. So this lady is a con artist, right? This is a con artist in the flesh, in the pay of the U.S. Department of State. Now let's continue. Experts say that the Kremlin, Russia, has also fueled an explosion of disinformation in Burkina Faso, a strategy it has used for years to project power and undermine Western interests across the Sahel, where military officers have cemented power in a series of coups. Videos and posts spreading false news about France. What? False news about France? Is she trying to defend France? You see, I noticed that is the tactic of these Western foreign policy advisors, right? If you actually talk about the graphic history of the French government, they say you are spreading disinformation, right? So if I talk about the fact that the French government actually invented the gas chamber, and the first time the gas chamber was used on a wide scale was against black men and women and children during the Haitian Revolution, they would deem that as me spreading Russian disinformation, right? So if you talk about the Paul Voulet and Julien Chanoine missions back in the 1800s when they invaded the Sahel, that is Russian disinformation, right? When you talk about the French government killing the Senegalese soldiers during World War II, that is Russian disinformation, right? You're telling lies about France. You're spreading negative information, disinformation about France. She's trying to run cover for France, as if African people, black people, don't have true grievances and a true bone to pick with the French government, as if our grievances are not legitimate, but are simply being reduced to Russian disinformation. Brother, yo, I'm real angry right now. You might not hear it, but my blood is boiling. The temperature is red hot right now. Anyway, let's continue. Videos and posts spreading false news about France and positive stories about Russia have caught fire on social media in the region. Now, time out. See, now she has revealed her hand, right? She does not care about the interests of the everyday citizen in Burkina Faso or any African country, right? This lady, her interest is in defending the interests of the State Department, of the French government, of the Western governments as a whole, right? The average citizen, the common citizen, is not sitting around having conversations about Russia all goddamn day, right? They're trying to feed their family, send their kids to school, right? And have a nice dinner at the end of the day, right? And have something to eat, have something to drink, have a place to stay, and to be able to live a dignified existence, right? When you start talking to me about, Russia this and Russia that and Russian influence, your interest is in your little, geopolitical battles that you're having, and you're trying to protect the interests of the U.S. government and her allies. You don't care about the interests of the common everyday citizen on the ground, right? You're a charlatan. You're a grifter, right? You're a grifter. Let's continue. Local journalists and activists who challenge the regime have been imprisoned or forcibly conscripted. Many have left the country. Many who remain have self-censored. Newton Ahmad Berry, a prominent journalist, fled Ouagadougou in 2023 following threats from the government. In recent months, Barry said that security personnel have raided his home and threatened his elderly mother with eviction. Serge Ulan, a former colleague, is believed to have been taken by the government forces and has not been heard from in more than a year. Now, time out. The first thing I would ask is, what were those men saying on their social media or on their media platforms, right? Because, for example, even in the United States, there are certain things you cannot say against the government, especially during times of war, because the federal agents will be knocking at your door, right? For example, I remember back in the day, take a look up on the screen. This was a while ago. October 2006, almost 20 years ago, a teenager was questioned about a threat that she made to George Bush on MySpace, right? Let's read the article. Upset by the war in Iraq, Julia Wilson vented her frustrations with President Bush. last spring on her webpage on myspace.com. She posted a picture of the president and said, "Kill Bush" across the top, right? It was too late. Federal authorities had found the page and placed her on the checklist. And they finally reached her this week in her molecular biology class. The 14-year-old freshman was taken out of class and questioned for 15 minutes by the Secret Service agents, right? So don't make it seem like the captain trying to approach a problematic journalist during a time of war is something that is out of the ordinary, when even in these United States of America, there are certain things you cannot say, even if you're a journalist or a civilian, because them federal agents will be at your front door for talking crazy, right? And then when I look into this guy, this journalist they mentioned in the article, NelsonAmadeus, I find out that he is currently living in exile in France, right? So that tells me if the French government provided you protection, that means that whatever you were saying was in line with the interests of the French government. You an agent of the French, because if you were an enemy of the French government, they would have never allowed you asylum inside their country. The French government doesn't allow problematic individuals who go against their national interest to seek asylum in their country. The reason why you're in France is because whatever you were saying in your journalism, it was in line with the French government. So that's the reason why the captain sent them goons at your front door. And guess what? He is well within his rights to do that. You notice in the article, she defends all the double agents, right? The political parties, the civil societies, the problematic journalists, right? Everybody pushing the line for the Western forces, she defends them all, right? The civil societies that we can infiltrate, right? The journalists pushing the narrative of the colonists, that is who she defends, right? And also going back to the accusations that she made, she said, oh, the captain, oh, he was going to evict this guy's mother and this dude over here. How do we have proof? How do you know that's true? How do we know that that's true? Right? I can write an article and say that my mother is from Mars and I'm not even from this planet. I could say anything in the article. You didn't provide no proof. You just said, oh, the captain attacked this guy's mother. How do I know that's true? Provide the proof. Where's the evidence? Right? Where's the evidence? Just like Emmanuel Macron said the French commander in custody, oh, he works at the embassy. He an embassy worker. Listen, we know y'all a bunch of liars. We cannot trust you. Anyway, let's continue. Beverly Ochang, who works as a senior analyst at Control Risk, a consultancy group, said of Traoré that two things can be true at the same time. He can be saying things that Africans wanted to hear from their leaders for a long time and also facing legitimacy challenges with regard to insecurity and human rights. But Traoré believes that the country is at war and that dissenting voices undermine the fight, according to a person close to the president. We have to choose survival, he said. Now, in the article, she cited a lady by the name of Beverly Ochang, right? And I believe she's from Kenya. And nothing wrong with that. We Pan-Africanists, nothing wrong with being from Kenya. But then when I looked at the company that she works for, Control Risk, a corporation based in London, in the United Kingdom, right? So she works for a British corporation who I'm assuming the majority of their clients are most likely Western investors and other Western corporations, which means that when she gives her analysis, she's giving it in the defense, in the interest of those same Western investors, right? Not for the sovereignty and the prosperity of the African people. That's just the reality. So we have to take her words with a grain of salt. But of course, she wants to quote a lady that works for a British consultancy firm and all these other individuals, journalists that are hiding in France. That is who this lady in this article wants to cite and bring up as credible individuals that need to be defended and cited as sources. So as we can see, this article was garbage. You know, it was propaganda, State Department propaganda sponsored by the U.S. government. That's all this was, right? Talking out both sides of her mouth. Oh, he's building the country. He's paving roads, but the country is under attack and the country's under siege and it's on fire. But he's doing amazing things, but he's a terrible leader and he's a demon and he's killing civilians. Talking out both sides of your mouth. But I get it. You're a grifter and you are getting a check to do what you do. But anyways, it's your boy Nefakari. That's the lane back in the Billy. Yes, indeed. 21 Cannons. First single off the next project. Pin comment at the top. Subscribe to the Patreon, NTD 1814. And I'm gone. Peace.
King of the North and I feel like Moise. Took a few losses, I'm back on my feet. Selling they soul for trinkets and cash. Right on the front like the leader from Chad. Feel like a see me, I feel like I'm Idris. Walking on gold, I handle my business. Honor, integrity, money, and power. Told me she love me, she want me in power. Told her I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. Told her come over, come see me in person. Told her come over, I'm sick of the talking. Don't got no time cause that money be calling. Working all night and I'm up in the morning. Love when I call her, she love my attention. Body and soul, I'm truly protected. Back on that road and big body business. Told her I love her, I told her she mine. Get in that passenger seat, we gon' ride. Back on my mission, that money been stacking. Came from the bottom, I'm steady expanding. Run to the check and I pull up in Vantage. Grabbing the neck from the back when I smash. Don't need no question, they know it's official. Come from the club for my life and no fiction. Ride for the scene like I'm army enlist. Gotta stay focused, I'm moving deliberate. Heart of a king and my heart full of pain. Look at my neck and it's flooded with chains. And I got Desaline blood in my veins. Enemy watching, I stay with a flame. Keep it 100, they know how we move. Black on black beamer, interior blue. How you gon' leave me? I told you I love you. Pain in my heart, you knew I was trouble. Enemy watching, they wanna invade it. Hoping my brothers don't never betray us. Been on my mind and I hope I can save us. Look at my flaws, I don't see perfection. But I'm authentic, I'm whipping the 7. Like it's a phantom, I'm still manifesting. Gotta get money, I gotta get paid. Stay on my toes when I'm ducking these snakes. Go to my wrist and the queen on my arm. Feeling my energy, loving my charm. Might go put Desaline face on a piece. Ready for war, that's how you get peace. Know I'm protected, I'm ready for action. When I walk in, I need 21 cannons. Secret location, I'm up in the palace. One of a kind and she loving my manners. One of a kind and I'm telling the truth. His and her Bentleys, I gotta get two. Feeling like future, we never gon' lose. Feeling like Garvey, I'm running the block. Entering off firm and I'm letting off shots. King of the north and I'm up at the top.
How you gon' leave me? I told you I love you. Pain in my heart and you knew I was trouble. Enemy watching, they wanna invade it. Hoping my brothers don't never betray us. Been on my mind and I hope I can save us. Look at my flaws, I don't see